Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Clarkston Community Address. We are so grateful for you to be here today. My name is Mark Ostach. I have the privilege of being the MC and host tonight. Before we get rolling into things, just turn to one of your neighbors and let them know it's good to see them, and just shake their hand or just warm up your voices briefly.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Good to see you. I feel like I'm in church. Okay.
We have a wonderful evening planned for you tonight with a variety of speakers from the community, and we're going to start things off first with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to welcome to the stage Chief Pesci to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next to the stage, I'd like to welcome the Clarkston Madrigals to sing the national anthem. Please give them a round of applause. Beautiful, wonderful job. Thank you so much. Well, I have the privilege, before we get into the official business at order, just to share the stage for about 15 minutes. For those that don't know me, my name is Mark Ostach. I'm a resident of Independence Township, and I have 2 kids, 3 dogs, and 1 wife. And I'm grateful for all of them. They are at dance at Mount Zion today, and I'm here having a chance to address you all. The reason why I'm here is because I have the privilege for a job to travel the country helping teams and communities better connect. So I do that through speaking and writing, and when I was asked by Lauren, who works for the city, if I could come here just to share a few remarks, I said absolutely. Being in community at an event like this is fantastic. So I just have a few stories that I'd like to share. Hopefully that'll encourage a deeper sense of community tonight. And we have a few moments of interaction that I'll lead us through in between each story. So that's the setup, that's where we're going. Let's start with the first story. This is John. John is a gentleman that I met on a plane. I take about 40 trips a year traveling, again, speaking for a living, and I met John on a trip from Detroit to Mississippi. Now, as you can see, John is an older gentleman, got a couple decades beyond me, but him and I had a chance to talk from the time we took off in Detroit all the way to the time we landed in Mississippi. We talked so much that the pop cart, and with the popcorn and the beers and the soft drinks, it just passed us by. That's how closely we were talking. And one of the things John was telling me was a story that had happened to him 20 years prior when he was leading a small company that he was managing. I don't know if this is going to come in and out. I'm going to switch mics on us. Is this better? A little bit better? I'll tuck it up. Okay, so John and we talked for the whole 2.5-hour flight, and he was telling me a story of 20 years prior when he was a younger dad like myself, and he had 3 kids at home. He had an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And John owned a small business. He did a lot of kitchen and bath remodels, second-generation business. Grew up on a farm and found himself, for the first time in his 20 years of business, having no work. And as a result, he was finding himself in a season that not only did he have no work, but his wife called him and said, "John, we are out of food." So John began to panic because he wasn't quite sure where he was going to get the next job to provide for the next meal for his family. And he told his wife, "It's going to be okay. Let's just take it through the night, and I'm hopeful that work will come around over the weekend." So John finds himself in the garage on a Saturday morning, kind of in a prayerful posture, hoping that he finds a call back from one of the jobs he has. And as he's wondering how he's going to put food on the table, all of a sudden his neighbor comes across the street into the garage and says, "Hey, John, I just wanted to say goodbye. It's been awesome being your neighbor for the past 20 years. My wife and I are moving south to Florida. Just wanted to come over, shake your hand, and say it's great to have been your neighbor for these past 20 years." And John said, he's distracted on the inside. He says, it's been nice being your neighbor. Thank you so much. Good luck to you and your wife. Godspeed and good luck. And the neighbor begins to cross the street, and as he gets to the edge of his driveway where the moving van sits, he turns back around to John and he says, "Hey, John, before we go, I forgot to mention my wife wanted to let you know that we have 2 weeks worth of groceries in our fridge if you and the family need some extra groceries." And John immediately just felt kind of humbled in the spirit. And he went inside and he said, "Boys, grab the coolers from the basement and come across the street with me. We're grabbing some groceries." And as John is telling me the story, it's over a 20-year story in John's memory. He reminded me of the significance of the neighbors that we have sometimes that are just across the street from us, that have a desire to help us out. And I thought this was a fitting story to start with because here we are at a community event, and sometimes we know the people that have owned businesses or work for city government, but sometimes you have people like myself who are new to the community and want to have a chance to get to know one another. So we're going to move into our first audience exercise through an activity called Hello Neighbor. So I'm going to invite everybody to stand where you're at. I know you're hoping to hear other people speak tonight, but you have to share your voices tonight as well. This activity is simple. The way that it works is I'm going to share a statement. If you agree with the statement that I share, you simply just say "Hello, neighbor." So let's start with something easy. I prefer coffee over tea. Hello, neighbor. Okay. All right. I grew up in a home with multiple siblings. Hello, neighbor. Okay. I have a family member with special needs. Hello, neighbor. Okay. I grew up in a divorced home. Hello, neighbor. All right. I prefer the early morning as opposed to the late night. Hello, neighbor. Okay. I experience seasonal depression in the winters. I am thankful that it's March. Okay. Anybody else have one to add to see who your neighbors are in the room?
I love coming to government functions like this.
Hello, neighbor.
Hello, neighbors.
I'm a business owner. Okay. She grew up in Clarkston. She's raising her family here.
I love grandchildren. Hello, neighbor.
I love grandmas.
I love the Clarkston Community Garden.
Hello, neighbor. I love the Clarkston Family Farm.
Hello, neighbor. We've been here less than 10 years in Clarkston.
Hello, neighbor. Looks like we have some diehard Clarkstonians in the room. Lastly, I believe the Detroit Lions will win the Super Bowl next year. Okay, you can sit back down. You can sit back down. As we carry on with the opening remarks, this is a picture of Ford Field. Who's been to Ford Field this year? Okay. Incredible stadium, incredible stadium. Interestingly enough, at the end of your life, you'll have had a chance to influence 65,000 people in your life. So a whole stadium full of people that said, hey, you made a difference in my life, you made a difference in my life, I remember you at the grocery store, thanks for helping out, or we worked together, et cetera, et cetera. And I think sometimes we underestimate the impact that people can have in those subtleties as we go throughout our day-to-day. So I want to share a story of one of those people that had an impact in our life. This is my family. We recently went up north to Boyne Ski Resort, and we had a fantastic time. It was the first time we were skiing. First time I'd been on skis in about 25 years. My wife hadn't been on skis, and the kids were just kind of breaking in their little ski legs. And after 3 days of nobody being injured, we returned to the minivan, which I packed up on the way there, and on the way back, I don't even know how I was able to fit everything back in the van. But as I did, I closed the van, we started driving back home to Clarkston. We're an hour down I-75 into our trip. And from the back seat, my daughter says, Dad, did you pack the pink stuffed animal unicorn? Exactly. And I took this mental inventory list of everything I packed, and I do not recall seeing the pink stuffed animal unicorn. Now, it was my daughter's favorite little wubby that she got from my sister in the hospital, and she'd slept with every night for the last 5 years. So you can imagine she was in a panic. So I did what any good dad did. I didn't turn the car around. I just called the Lost and Found department at Boyne Resorts. And strangely enough, there was an actual department, and it was ran by a woman named Penny. Penny had worked in the Lost and Found department for 18 years, fielding calls from patrons like myself, wondering where their precious belongings were. So after Penny took down the make and model of this pet unicorn, brought in a sketch artist from the local Boyne City Police Force, she reassured me, Mr. Ostach, if the unicorn shows up, we'll be sure to let you know. And I call her 2 days later, no unicorn. Call her 2 weeks later, nothing. Call her one last time, it's the end of the ski season, it's been a month. I said, Penny, did you find this pink unicorn? My daughter's having trouble sleeping. And she said, Mr. Ostach, I did not. So we found ourselves on a Friday night, 5 weeks after this Boyne adventure, kind of mid-March like now, where it's starting to warm up, and the doorbell rings. And I go out to the door and I realize it's a package, and not just an Amazon package, it's a package from Boyne Resort. And I open the package, and the first thing that I see is this note. And it says, well, by the way, that's what the Lost and Found department looks like in my mind. Here's the note I found in the package. It says, Mila, which is my daughter's name. Thank you for letting me stay at Boyne Mountain a few more days. I rode the chairlift. It was fun. So was the water park. I miss you, though, and I was ready to come home. And this is Mila reunited with her pink stuffed animal unicorn. I assure you, this is the cleanest unicorn on the planet. They found it in the laundry services. So 5 weeks of being tucked in with the sheets. And I believe this story represents not only the influence that we have, but as servants of the community, as people who care about the community you live in, sometimes it's not what you get, but how you give yourself to the things that you find of significance. And I want to share one more story here before we move on. This idea of influence comes from a really fascinating book called The Gift of Influence. And the story that the author starts with is from a 1955 teacher who was leading a middle school, a bunch of students that had to administer a math test 1 hour before spring break. So imagine in 1954, no air conditioning, a bunch of kids acting like, eager to get out of class. And she decides, because she's looking around the room and she's realizing none of these kids are actually paying attention to what I'm saying. So she decides to call an audible, walks over to the blackboard, smacks it with her stick, gets everyone's attention and said, everyone has a passing grade on your math test. Instead of taking the math test, I want everybody to sharpen their pencil and take out a sheet of paper. So they did just that. She said, you have 18 classmates in this room. Before you leave for spring break, you need to take your pencil and you need to write 18 statements about each person. You need to write a compliment for each of your classmates. Speak something positive about each of your classmates. Write it down. When you're done, turn it into me. Each student wrote 18 statements about each one of their 18 classmates, turn it into the teacher. One by one, they left for spring break. Over spring break, that teacher, Mrs. Thompson, decided to take all the 18 statements about you and compile them onto a new sheet, and you, and so on and so forth. Comes back from spring break, passes out these individual sheets of paper to each student, and watches as each student begins to cry and laugh and look around the room thinking, my peers think this of me? 10 years later, those students graduate from their high school. Some of them went on to trade school, some of them got jobs in the local community, and some of them went on to war. One of those students that went on to war became a fallen soldier in duty. And during his funeral, back when you'd have funerals in the family room, you'd have, kind of the folks gather at the home, you'd have the casket in the family room. The teacher walks in, and the parents of the fallen soldier hadn't seen the teacher since 7th grade, and said, Mrs. Thompson, follow us. So they left the family room, they went over down the hallway into their little home, and they pulled her into the bedroom of the fallen soldier, and on the bed was a perfectly folded American flag and a hard helmet. And they sat her on the bed, they said, you made such an influence in our son's life all these years later. We just wanted to thank you. We wanted to show you something. And the dad went over to the hard hat and lifted it up, and underneath the lining of the hard hat, he pulled out a folded sheet of paper. And it was torn and tattered and yellow from sweat stain, and he unfolded it, and it's the 18 statements that his classmates spoke over him 10 years ago. Carried it in his wallet, carried it in his hard hat during duty, and he carried it with him as he believes it spoke the life over himself that he wanted to live. So before we get into our next moment here, I wanted to use this as an opportunity. We gather together to be intentional, and I'm going to ask something of you that I think is a little bit bold, but I want you to, in a moment, I want you to find 2 people in the room, and I want you to speak something positive over them. Whether you know them or not, whether you are sitting by them, whether you live with them, hopefully it's somebody that you don't live with. But I want you to find a couple people in the room before we officially get into this, and just speak a compliment over them or speak what you see in them. So you have 2 minutes to do that. So you can stand up, find somebody, and pay them a compliment.
well, you can do it as a
Just take another 30 seconds to wrap up your compliments.
You got Bill, you got Bill.
Okay.
If you can find your seats, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. How many of you enjoyed receiving a compliment? Just a show of hands. How many of you felt it hard to receive a compliment? You wanted to deflect to the other person. Okay, great. Before I introduce Sue, I do have, I forgot I had one last story to share that's specific to Independence Township. And this last story just kind of sums up my remarks this morning, or this evening before we get going. But we have a devotional book at home called Love Does by Bob Goff. He's a great, he's a great author and a great voice in the community. But he talks about when he moved to California in 1972, him and his four kids and wife wanted to get to know the community, so they decided in California to put on a parade in their subdivision. Now, fascinatingly enough, he didn't know anybody, but back before you had the internet, he went and flyered the sub, and he said, we have balloons and donuts, and the finish line's at our house. We're going to start over here, and we're going to put together a parade. Well, 10 a.m. hits on the day of the parade. He goes there, no one's there. Him and his family feel a little bit of despair. So they say, you know, we're just going to give it another 10 minutes. And before you know it, over the horizon of the hill starts to walk the families, the dogs, the bicycles, the fire truck, and even they had a neighbor in the community that played the bagpipe, that brought his bagpipe. Fast forward to 2025, they still have that annual parade in his neighborhood. So when I moved from Royal Oak to Clarkston with my family 3 years ago, I thought, well, Bob's got a great idea here. I think we should do a parade in our community. And my wife immediately said, we're too busy to organize a parade. Go do some work and get out of my hair, basically, is what she said. But that's not where I stopped, so I decided to do some investigation. Can you remind me who this is on the team over here?
Yeah, that's Lieutenant Matt Decker.
Lieutenant Matt Decker gave us a tour. I said, Mr. Decker, we have a date picked for our community. I don't know who's going to show, but if you have the time, would you mind bringing a fire truck on Saturday at this time, 10 o'clock? He said, I'd be happy to. We can't guarantee it, but if we don't have anything going on, we'll be there. So I thought, okay, I got a fire truck. I have a Facebook page, and I can take the kids door to door in our community. We live on Oak Hill and in Sashabaw. So we began kind of advocating for this. I'm on the HOA of our community, and I began selling the idea to the HOA, just the four of us, and they were like, no one's going to come to this parade. So I felt the wind being set out of my sails. What even topped it off the day of the parade was it was going to rain. So I was like, I'm feeling stressed and frustrated. No one's going to be here. It's going to rain on my parade. So I did what any smart dad did. I took my son to the Tim Hortons on Sashabaw, and we got some sugar. So I figured, well, maybe if some people do show up, we'll get some coffee and donuts. Well, I just want to share, not only did it not rain, but we had a fantastic turnout, and we had more people in our community than I'd met in the 2 years prior at any event we put on, and it was fantastic. And I felt convicted before I was preparing my remarks for today that I wanted to share this story because I believe it represents two things. It represents intentional community, and it represents taking action when you have an idea that brings the community together. And in a post-COVID world, we need to be really, really intentional on how we're gathering together. And we need to pull these kids out of their houses to remind them that there's lots of good things outside. So that's really what I wanted to share with you tonight was it helps to strengthen healthy communities by knowing each other like we did in the Hello Neighbor exercise. I think when we grow together, when we speak life over one another, it represents a desire to edify the community. And then lastly, sometimes we just need to take action on the ideas that we have for our community. So with that said, I'd like to introduce someone that takes a lot of action, that's a great asset for the community. This is Sue. She is the mayor of the city of Village of Clarkston. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Yes, so please welcome to the stage, Sue. Transferring Mike, this is a copy of a book I wrote. You can download it if you so care. It's got a bunch of stories in it. Give this to you.
I wanted to thank John Elke and the Independence Television crew for putting on that video and for, I think they're televising tonight. And I also want to thank Independence Township for organizing this event and for inviting the city, the village of Clarkston, and myself to be here tonight. And I have to admit that I'm very nervous speaking to you all tonight. This is probably the biggest group I've ever spoken to. Even though I'm a former high school teacher, I am used to being in front of smaller groups. But I do think that perhaps being in front of a group of adults, you're a little less judgmental maybe than a group of high school students. I was telling my son earlier about me being nervous, and he gave me a little hint. He and I are both fans of the show The Office, and he says, just when you're preparing, his advice was, don't do what Dwight Schrute did. When he spoke to a group of people, if you're a fan of The Office, you might remember this, he kind of decided to imitate Benito Mussolini, and as he spoke, he constantly pounded on the table. He thought that that would be a good way to catch people's attention, and I'm not following that advice. Anyway, tonight we're here to celebrate our community, and when I say community, I mean all the communities. The city of the village of Clarkston, Independence Township, and Clarkston Community Schools. And I mentioned thanks to Independence Township. I want to thank Chuck Phyle, especially Lauren Rinke, for organizing the event, for helping me out. Clarkston Community Schools and Amy Seaman for allowing us to use the Performing Arts Center. Big thanks to the Clarkston City staff, especially our city manager, Jonathan Smith, and the treasurer, Greg Cote. And the city of the village of Clarkston is a tightly knit small community. We have a unique historic character, beautiful natural and recreational features, a traditional downtown setting. And Clarkston not only offers an excellent quality of life for its residents, but also serves as a popular dining and entertainment destination for many visitors. And actually, I think that was my first slide. What I did say, we want to maintain the integrity of a small town with a unique historic character. We're historic. We've got homes going back to the 1820s. There's a commercial building that goes back to 1842. We would like to maintain the vitality of our downtown, which continues to evolve. An example of that is we've had Rudy's open within the past year, Two South Brunch House, and they're joining some of the more traditional, older standards that we have in Clarkston, such as the Clarkston Union and the Clarkston Travel Agency. We have beautiful natural and recreational features like Deer Lake, Middle Lake, Park Lake, Clinton River. We have wetlands, lots of animals such as deer, coyotes, beavers, my favorite, sandhill cranes. And we need to maintain the quality of life for residents. I did want to get a little bit into some of the finances, and I'm taking this off of our budget. Our general total revenue, which is the 101 fund, our budget for the 24-25 fiscal year was roughly $859,000, which is a percent change of negative 13.7 from fiscal year 23-24. And our 101 fund general total appropriations was $853,296, which was a decline, a percent change of negative 13.9 from fiscal year 23-24. Our major streets revenue, which is a different fund, was $87,000, which is up 5.7%. Our major street appropriations is $77,000, which is up 6.4%. Our local street revenue is $138,430. It's a big increase, it's up 291%, but that's because some of the money was transferred from the fund balance. And we have local street appropriations, which is $138,341, up 291.6%. And the last thing on there I have is capital project fund proposed appropriations, which is our 401 fund. That was $326,500. And the source of this money for special projects was our fund balance, our parking fund, tax revenue. I got everything on there. And it's a small budget. We're a small city. We operate on a very tight budget thanks to the staff, the manager and the treasurer. But even as a small city, we still have some major expenses that are big. Again, a little bit more on finances. I've got the term up there, fund balance. Fund balance is the money we have available to spend, and it's the difference between our revenues and our appropriations. Our starting fund balance on July 1st, 2024 was roughly $270,000. And our projected revenue for this year was $859,000. Our projected expenditures, the 101 fund was $853,000. These are our operating expenses. And our projected 401 expenditures, which is the capital projects fund, was $126,500. And our net revenue divided by the expenditure, net revenue versus expenditures in the 401 project fund was a negative $120,000. Our projected ending fund balance on June 30th, 2025 is $150,032. And our projected year-end fund balance as a percent of the 24-25 operational expenditures is 17.6%. I want to talk about some of the successes in Clarkston. Most of them are fairly recent, like in this past year. And the list, which I'll talk about a little bit more, is we have a new city website. We had successful 2024 elections. We have many wonderful community events, wonderful community partners, environmental improvements, and infrastructure improvements. And I'll go through each one of these. First of all, the new city website, and I noticed Independence Township also has a new website. The ad to reach it, it's www.villageofclarkston.org. It's a good resource if you want to look up things about the local government, our departments, if you need to download some documents, the agendas, the calendars, maps, other organizations within the city. Other successes we had was completing a successful 2024 election. I've got a lot of numbers up there. We had a successful primary and general election. Out of 747 registered voters, about 89% of those people voted in the November election. We had 95 people voting in early voting, 271 by absentee. With the total of early and absentee voters was 55%, which is a big increase in previous years, and about 45% of the people voted in person in the general election. Some of the community events that we have, I'm going to list a number of them, and then later on I'll talk about some of the people some of the groups who are involved with them. One thing we do every year is the 4th grade Clarkston History Tour. In that, students walk through the village, they visit businesses, they visit City Hall, they participate in city government. Usually, our city manager, Jonathan Smith, usually conducts it, and he lets somebody be mayor for the day, and they get to pretend they're having a city council meeting, and the students learn about the history of Clarkston. I'm going to put these all on because I can't see what's up there. We have concerts in the park. That's kind of an old standby at Depot Park. We have a 4th of July parade, which is probably an even older event. Art in the Village, which takes place in the fall. Taste of Clarkston, which also takes place in the fall. We have Clarkston Christmas Market, which is a relatively new event, and Christmas Lights Parade. Those are both in December. And then we have Winterfest, sometimes known as Chill Fest, and that's in the winter, usually in February or January. There they are. And we work with many wonderful community partners to help do a number of things in the city, including some of those events I mentioned. For instance, the Clarkston community, the 4th grade walk, that involves Clarkston schools. We work with the Clarkston community, it should be Historical Society. They work with us on Art in the Village, or actually they put on Art in the Village, and they also put up the informational signs about history and the different residents in town. We work with the Clarkston Area Optimist Club. They put in many of the equipment in our playground, a lot of improvements in Depot Park. And we work with the Clarkston Chamber of Commerce, there it is. They do concerts in the park and Taste of Clarkston. Other partners we've worked with include the Christmas Market Committee. Again, I mentioned this is a relatively new group and a new event. We just finished the 3rd year, and there's a small committee that runs that. It's been a big success. If you haven't been to it, I suggest you come. It's always on the first day, or it's on the same day as the Christmas Lights Parade. Laura Rogers and Amy Wilson have run that for the last 3 years. We also have Team Rush, which runs the Christmas Lights Parade. This is Team Rush, the first robotics team. And another group we work with is the Blue Heron Headwaters Land Conservancy. And they help us with invasive species, protecting our waterways, they're advisory to the city, and they've also helped with some bioswales, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Some other successes we've had is working on environmental improvements. One of the ways is we have a city committee called the Clarkston Biophilic Committee. Biophilic means life-loving. And this is a group that is determined to try to ensure that we have a good natural environment in Clarkston. One of the things they've done is they've worked on installing something called bioswales. And bioswales, they're to help the waterways from being contaminated by runoff, from rain runoff or things coming from the streets. And they're part of the stormwater management. They usually are a rain garden surrounding storm sewer grates. And what happened with our the Biophilic Committee, they worked with students from the Clarkston High School Environmental Club, and they constructed 5 bioswales in the city at residences. There's also one at Clarkston High School, and previous to that, the Biophilic Committee also put one in at Depot Park. And also, as I mentioned before, the Biophilic Committee, one of their environmental improvements is to try to eradicate invasive species such as purple loosestrife, phragmites, and knotweed. And that's something, again, that they work on with the Blue Heron Headwaters Land Conservancy. And other successes, we're working on improving infrastructure. In 2024, there was 3 roads that were repaved. That was Depot Road, South Holcomb, and West Washington. And also, we had many of our sewers inspected, and some of them, sewer lines inspected, and some of them were repaired. But as much as we have those accomplishments and successes, there are also some future concerns. And one of the biggest future concerns is we really have very little potential for future growth, and I'll talk about each one of these. We do have some looming expenses, and one of our future concerns is being able to retain a qualified city staff. And let's talk first about the limit for potential growth. Everybody knows Clarkston's small. Geographically, we're small. We are basically built out. There's very little land left for development, unlike some other communities, including Independence Township, which have vacant land and have room for development. We really don't. So basically, we are kind of dependent on increases in property values for increased revenue. And I know, of course, then property taxes are a concern for our residents. There's a few little pockets here and there that could possibly be developed. We also rely on fees for parking for revenue. And of course, we have to balance our fiscal responsibilities while ensuring families, businesses, and communities continue to thrive. And I just want to talk about one example of our perhaps maybe something bright about our limit for potential growth. We do have one sizable piece of vacant land in Clarkston. It's a vacant land at Main and Walden, and almost everybody who drives that area is familiar with. It's really our last large piece of undeveloped land. Unfortunately, the land is difficult to develop. It's got stream going through it, it's got wetlands, and that really impacts how much space can be used for development. And there's also new concerns about putting a new building in the Clarkston Historic District. And hopefully at some point something can happen with this so we can get this land developed. Another future concern is looming expenses, is the looming expenses. I've got a few things I want to talk about that. One is the Oakland County Board of Commissioners voted to increase Sheriff's Department rates by almost 34%, and it's going to take place over 4 years. So all the communities that are serviced by the Sheriff's Department are seeing an increase in what they have to pay. Now for the township, this amounts to, as what I understand, is $1.8 million spread over 3 years. Now, our city, Clarkston, we don't have our own police department. That was, I don't know how long ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that we got rid of the police department. And we get our sheriff's services through Independence Township, who we have a contract with. And because the township is going to have an increase in their services for police services, ours is also going to go up. For fiscal year 24-25, we budgeted almost $156,000 for police expenditures, and I'm anticipating once we have a contract signed and it will increase in fiscal year 25-27 because of the increased cost being passed on by the township. Some more future concerns, again, looming expenses, is the city's longtime attorney is retiring this summer, and he has probably been allowed us to keep some of our legal expenses down, and the city does anticipate an increase in legal fees starting fiscal year 25-26. Another concern is our current building services company that provides building inspections is increasing their fees, and we're going to either have to pay those fees or search for other sources of building services contract. And another one, and this is probably true for every community in this area, the sewers are aging, the sewers need work, repair costs. Now this is a different fund, we have a sewer fund, but it's still a concern because whatever happens, we're going to have to pay for it. My last future concern is regarding staffing. And the city has 1 full-time employee, 4 part-time employees, and 1 contract employee. Like I say, we're small. And all of these employees are extraordinarily dedicated to the city. Can't say enough good about them and their jobs. They're dedicated to the city and their jobs, and many of them are working for below market salaries. And the city must continue to find ways to fairly and competitively compensate all of our employees to prevent turnover, and we also have to continue to ensure that they are adequately and regularly trained. For instance, our DPW people have to be trained on how to take care of eradicating invasive species. The treasurer has to be trained on the latest information they have about treasurers and accounting. So, in closing, I just want to say that I am always filled with pride. Sorry, I can't hit that. Pride and gratitude to be a resident of the city of the Village of Clarkston. I've lived in Clarkston since 1994. And before that, I was in Independence Township, starting in 1987. I'm also proud to be the mayor of the city of the Village of Clarkston. And every street in Clarkston, it has a story. Every building has a story because we're historic. And some of these stories are still forming. Some of the streets and buildings are very old, and they have, of course, because of their age, they have a lot more stories and memories. Some of them are newer, like my neighborhood and my home is newer, but that doesn't mean that those stories still are not important and those memories are still not important. And I think in Clarkston, a lot of times we can see both the past and present is coming together. So as we move forward, we all must ensure that our city continues to be a community we can all be proud of and part of our greater community that includes Independence Township and the Clarkston Community Schools. And I want to say thank you, but again, I just want to give these thanks for the people who helped me do this. Lauren Rinke from Independence Township, Lauren Rinke, Chuck Phyle, Jennifer Spiegel, David Canton, all from Independence Township. Clarkston Community Schools, including Amy Seaman and her staff for getting this all together. The City of the Village of Clarkston staff, especially Jonathan Smith and Greg Cote, and thank you. This looks like some old slides that did not get deleted.
Before Sue leaves the stage, how many of you have been to one of those events that she mentioned downtown Clarkston? Do you not feel like you are transported into a small town that has stop time? Yes? Thank you so much for you and your team
Thank you.
putting together such fantastic events and for your remarks today. Let's give Sue another round of
Okay.
applause. We're going to have Dr. Ryan come up next. Dr. Ryan,
As you come up here, we have an opportunity now to hear from Dr. Ryan, who is the superintendent of Clarkston Schools, and he's got some remarks to share with him, and we're looking forward to hearing those remarks. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Shawn Ryan.
Now, I have control here. But while we're figuring that part out, I am Shawn Ryan. I am your superintendent of schools for Clarkston, and I have the best job in the world to work with community's children. And to be able to partner this evening with Independence Township, with the city of the village, together, government, schools, our community in one place, I absolutely love it. I've been in Clarkston close to 30 years, so if you talk to George White, he says I'm still a baby and have no perspective on this town or how it operates, but thank God for George, one of our former principals and community members. You know, there's deep roots here in Clarkston. And myself, I came here 30 years ago as a student teacher at Clarkston High School, the old one as we call it still here in town. And for the first semester I had student lunch prices given to me because they thought I actually was a kid and not a teacher. I had kind of a baby face back then. I've kind of grown into it. But the way I look at it in my mind, I grew up in Clarkston. And when people come here, they pick it, they choose to live here, they choose to raise their families here. In a lot of ways, the people that have really been here and are part of our community know what I'm going to say next when I say that I came to Clarkston to be part of Clarkston. I didn't leave because Clarkston adopted me. And I think sometimes we forget how special our town is. And I've raised now 2 sons full grown and 2 of them are still in school, 2 daughters. And they think I'm corny and I'm out of step. I'm not fashionable. They don't like to associate me in public. And they call me corny because I look at Clarkston and what I see is our town. Thornton Wyle, all right? We heard that it's like transporting back in time. I think it does a lot more than that. I think we're something that kind of defies time. And being responsible for the community's children to preserve that couldn't be a better job, a better place to really dig in as part of our community. Because when I look across this community, and I'm going to give the cameraman a real challenge here. And by the way, I have a kind of wounded wing here. I had rotator surgery a couple weeks ago. But I look across this audience, and I wish more people would have came tonight. But I see not only my colleague school board members here, Cheryl and Amanda, but I see individuals that are part of our Independence Library. I mean, it's literally our town. I see individuals who had kids in school a decade ago, but I still remember the National Merit Scholar that's doing amazing things in the world. You know, I look across and I see people that are part of the Historical Society in Clarkston, and I serve on as members of the Chamber of Commerce. What's the superintendent doing on the Chamber of Commerce? I'd say, what is the superintendent not doing? Why isn't your educators and your business tying our community together? I see presidents of optimists in our town. I don't know how he does it, but you and the team, 7 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, I mean, you're always smiling, you're always happy, always engaged. It's infectious.
hello, neighbor.
Hello, neighbor. Seriously. I look across, I see our state representative here. I look back and I see somebody, I don't know if you guys know Joette. I think everybody knows Joette. She worked with a group of our junior high students to look at tombstones from Civil War veterans from Clarkston that served way back when and help preserve their stories, give appreciation to kids, right? How many stories do we hear nowadays that it's not about that, right? We've lost our way. We have no sense of history, purpose, right? No. I'm looking up there, you know what I see? When I think of Clarkston, I think of respect, family, pride, excellence, tradition, community. Now, can I get a hey neighbor on that? All right? We don't have our whole town. Our whole town should be here this evening. Because we have also individuals that help restore homes in Clarkston to their glory. I know he gets emotional even talking about it with me. I have individuals that within this week that are parents in Clarkston schools, and honest to God, I have not set this up. I do thank him for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight, though, our Lord. But I also say, working with people to make sure their kids are getting the best possible education they can, right? I see an individual who was a former school board member, and I bet he does not know that I had a meeting yesterday about the trees in your area due to our bond project around the junior high. It's weird, right? Didn't know who was going to show up tonight, but I can walk into any crowd on any street in Clarkston. I'm the guy who walks with his wife with her golden retriever down Walden, right? You guys been there? And love it because Clarkston has sidewalks. It might seem crazy, might seem simple, but it makes a big difference. When you come to a group of this, and I can say, hey, all of our first responders, or even their bosses, they're in the crowd, give a wave. Right now, please. Wave to the crowd here so they can see where you're at. Thank you. Why aren't we saying thank you to This, to me, is what makes the Clarkston area, community, and our schools different. Because there's a lot wrong out in the world right now. But what I can tell you is when I look at just a snapshot of our graduating class last year, just under 500 grads, right? 268, these are the ones we know about, attending college. 32 are athletes in college, Division I, Division II athletes. 46 went directly into the workforce. 26 are attending trade school this year, God bless them. And 11 joined the armed forces. So proud of those kids. And really, to tell the tape of our community, it is so incredibly important that we protect our schools and protect our children to be a reflection of what we value in Clarkston. Let that sink in. What we value in Clarkston is fragile. What we value in Clarkston needs to be maintained and fought for. And it starts, to me, not only with our city government, and the city of the village, and our Independence Township, but our school system has got to be in the front row with that. We have to be part of the solution. And I have one slide only, to me, to tail the tape, because the rest of what I say will mean nothing unless I can show that the kids in Clarkston are kicking butt. And I thank our school board and our community for their support. But I have 3 different colors up there. You don't have to read this that closely, because I'm just showing this for example where we are in time. Because right now, if you watch the news, what do you hear about the schools across the country and student achievement in math and literacy? It's going down the tubes. It was bad and hurt during COVID, boo-hoo, and then since then, we cry because every year it's gone down since then. Mandela, what has happened to student achievement every year since COVID? Yell it out. In Clarkston.
It's gone up.
It's gone up, right? We've gone up every single year, and we're actually higher right now in our math and reading than we were before COVID. Why? Wait, why? Yeah, clap, this is your school. Because we value the right things. Say it again. We value the right things. What happened when schools used to be about teaching kids so they could read, write, learn a trade, learn some skills, be ready for college and the rest of their life? Do you remember that? How many of you remember that? Can I get a hey neighbor? Hey neighbor. Thank you. Somehow, vast majority of my estimation of schools across this great country have lost their way in a lot of ways. Not here. Not here, not at all. And what you see here is a comparison in the blue, which almost looks black up there. That's Clarkston. The next closest competitors we have, which are not even the best competitors, are Oakland County. God bless them too. I want everything great for their kids as well. And then in the red is the rest of the state of Michigan. And they don't touch us in any area. And we're increasing that gap every year. I'm not satisfied where it is. Neither is Cheryl or Amanda. We're here to push it further. But it's important for you to hear from me as your superintendent what we hold value, what we hold important in this community. How? What's the secret to our success? Is it just nose to the grindstone? Is it hard work? Absolutely. Those are values that we teach in Clarkston to our kids. We teach them respect. But we also have over 1,300 dedicated staff members. Many of our teachers have higher advanced degrees. Most of our support personnel, guess what? They work for Clarkston schools. They're not third-party contracts. They live in Clarkston. They walk the streets. They're our neighbors, and we see them at Kroger. And they give me an earful at Kroger, let me tell you. It's great. Whole person focus, meaning simply that we make sure that the kids coming in, that when they're young and they need those supports, because it's a tough world out there right now. There's a lot of things that kids struggle with. We make sure that mental health is supported, because not only is it good for the kid, it makes our schools safer, right? You gotta take it by the horns. Safety and security, huge in Clarkston. Right now, with the cooperation, and will be the continued cooperation with Independence Township, we have 3 resource officers that cover each one of our secondary buildings, including this high school, every single day. Our students, including our elementary, we also have a 4th officer supported by Springfield Township. They, in our halls, in our classrooms every single day. They're not security guards, guys. No, not at all. They come to play every single day, engaging kids, building relationships, solving crime that occurs in the area, supporting this community, and making a presence. Do you think it's an accident when kids grow up and go out of this community and have a respect for law, right? Have a value and respect for people? No, that's part of the solution. They're a critical and vital part of it. We also have a former Michigan State Police major who is our safety director for our school district. When it comes to everything from how we do our protocols to make sure kids know what to do in a crisis, or we look at anything to do with our physical plant safety, doors, entrances, all that. It's a team. 10, 15 years ago, was this something we worried about? Not at all. Now what do we need to be? The best. Parents who drop their children off here, the kids that need to go to school here, need to have that idea that they are safe, that they can come to school without worry. Let me tell you guys, you want to have the best achievement? Your kids are worried about when they walk into the front doors. They don't do that in Clarkston. I have a lot to thank to our Oakland County Sheriffs that do 100% to support us. Additionally, top next technology, we make sure we don't overdo it. We make sure they have the access to the tools so they can be successful in the world they're going to be living in. As far as student opportunities, hopefully many had an opportunity to see Hello Dolly in here. Again, it's a classic Americana. Amazing sets, singing, music. You know, for a couple bucks, you had a great night's entertainment. If you missed it, come see us next year. A lot going on. And let me tell you, basketball, any sport in Clarkston, right? The excellence, I don't need to speak any more to it. You know, our support systems, we look at both ends of the spectrum. We want kids to make sure that they can read, write, and do math when they graduate from school. When I hear schools that have graduates that can't read, it makes me sick. As a taxpayer, it makes me sick. We deserve and should expect better. In our little bubble here, we do. As far as what they do when they leave here, we believe in Clarkston, and this is speaking from our school board and myself, is that every kid needs to be coming out of Clarkston with a direction and knowing what their next steps are. If we're not, what are we here for? You know, question purpose. Don't give people free passes that way. And then when it comes down to specialty programs, this is where Clarkston really shines. Because if you're really going to have excellence, students need ways that they can show that they're smart and get past high school to get on to the next level. And you see things like what I have up here, AP classes. You know what the average number of AP classes in Oakland County, the top county in the state of Michigan for education is? 8. Clarkston, 19. Why? Because the more advanced opportunities that our kids can explore and college credits they can get on their way, not only helps parents paying that tuition, which is just unbelievably, I think it's criminal, but they can start to get those things as they go on to the next level. We also have kids that we do help support and take college classes if we can't offer it. But that's not where it stops. We have International Baccalaureate, which is also another form of AP. We have many students in that. We have an amazing CSM Tech program. who also, many of the students are involved in our robotics, which you heard run our lights parade and in our community. These students are focused in science and math, and they have an ability to get with other students that have those same type of interests and really kind of cycle through over years as they go on to tech school or wherever they want to go past that. It's awesome. We have a cooperative agreement with University of Michigan Flint, so they actually come into our building and teach college classes. Who would have known it? Well, you came here, so you got to hear about it. They don't have to go outside this building to take college classes, in addition to the AP and everything they're getting. One of my most pride points there, you see that wolf with the hammer in its mouth, our construction tech program. Amazing. So long ago, we used to have such a vibrant tech program when it came to industrial arts in Clarkston and across the state, and we've lost it. And you know what happened? 100,000, as Rev Harris would tell you, 100,000 trades jobs open right now. Well, you can't just wish it to be better for that to happen, for those skilled positions to get going. You got to grab them in high school. You got to give them the portal to leave high school and then go on to the next level. Our construction tech program is getting amazing skills now in classroom, but again, I'll even look over to Sam again, working with Preservation Clarkston and trying to get out into our community. That's part of our vision. Get out there and help. Think about high school kids out there working part of Preservation Clarkston and restoring part of the history of our town. I'm just so proud of it. I mean, this is what it's about. You know, looking at our career tech focused education and computers and a whole slew of different type of opportunities on the kids' way to college. And then you have project-based learning and our relationships with the Oakland Schools Technical Campus. There's so many different ways that our kids can show that they're smart, engaged, and prepare themselves for the next level. Okay? That's where schools should be focusing on. Excellence, every level. Past that, seeing is believing. But this is part of the pitch that I really want our community to hear. Hopefully they're watching this if they're not here this evening, but we don't do it alone. All the wonderful things that you see in Clarkston schools that we do to support to be our part of making this community great come from our partners. And I heard the city, the village named partners, and we're one of their partners. And you know, you look at everything from the projects that the students do out in the community they're involved with. But Independence Township and Springfield Township have been great in terms of support, not only in our overlapping services like Parks and Rec and some of the things we offer, they also support us in our resource officers, again, that safety and security piece. We look at the Clarkston Coalition of Youth, Preservation Clarkston, Lafayette, the Clarkston Family Farm, which is actually joined on one of our campuses at Independence Elementary, north of town. The Chamber of Commerce, which yours truly is part of, sees that connection between business and education and the health and wealth of our community. The Rotary, the Optimist Club, I mean, there's so many, I couldn't fit them on this slide. They're such great partners. I mean, the Optimist Club has done so much student recognition and investment in scholarships. There's just so many different areas that we, as Clarkston Schools, are successful because of you. And anybody in this world that thinks they do it alone, got another thing coming to them. Because they're either not paying attention or they're not seeing the relationships that they have. And we are so fortunate in Clarkston to be able to lean on that and be part of the community. Our bond, the community invested just under $200 million in building a brand new junior high school, in making a lot of physical plant, roof improvements, climate control, parking lots. We have over, I think it's 1.5 million square feet worth of buildings in Clarkston, which is bigger than Great Lakes Crossing. And like any homeowner, and this is the things that I preach to our team, when you have something go wrong at your house, take care of it. Don't let things get worse because then it just costs more. So looking at the investment that this community has had, and those funds that were put in for the bond can only be used for the community's intention for building, not for any operational costs that we have. But it's amazing to see it because at the end of the day, that same 22-year-old that was getting the reduced lunch prices, and I probably still owe a little bit back for those days, now gets to be part of handing over to the next generation as a steward with all the other stewards in this community, the wonderful part that is Clarkston. And I just want to have it here as I thank the community for its support and look to the future, that I ask you as your superintendent, again, as your superintendent, that we don't take Clarkston for granted. I thank our kids, and I try to tell our students that too, things that we take for granted disappear. And right now, in the world that we live in, Clarkston is special that way. And I ask your help as a greater community. Help me continue to make student achievement and overall welfare of this community's children at the top of our minds, because they are our next generation. When we're gone and turned to dust, we need them to carry this on. And I don't know why I'm driven and stay up late at night thinking about it, but the health and the overall prosperity and the long range, keeping Clarkston is top of my mind. And I feel like I need to do absolutely everything I can, including making sure you all hear those elements of the school district that reflect you, our values, and what we're about. Don't believe or think the nonsense that we hear out there in the greater country, state, wherever it is outside the walls of this place, reflect us. And make sure that we be good tenants, not only in terms of our city and our township governments, and be vocal, be present, be active, but don't bat an eye in making sure our schools don't get anything that they ever were one bit less. Because I'm on the shoulders of many people that went to school here. Your teachers were my mentors 30 years ago. You know, their words, their actions, the way they carry themselves, all still right up here. And I'll tell you, I'm doing my best to instill in the next generation of leaders in Clarkston, because it's something when you've been in place 30 years and then you actually are still there long enough to be a superintendent of the place, that kind of posterity is what I want to see 10, 15, 20 years. So when I'm that old man, like Mel Barr was, and I'm walking down Main Street, maybe a little bit slower even than I am right now with this sling, I want to be able to look at that school bus going by and take a sense of pride to know that, you know what, there was a time where I got to stand at the wheel, right? I got my turn to make sure that we did it for our kids and for our community. And I'm going to take a lot of pride in that. I'm not going to take one step back. So I want to thank everybody here tonight. I want to thank Mr. Phyle. I want to thank for hosting and for our entire community that was able to attend tonight. And keep the faith, okay? We got you. Thank you.
Such passion. We're not done. Those were great closing remarks for his section. We have one more to go. But I just want to acknowledge Dr. Shawn Ryan. That's the first time I've met you and heard you speak, and I can tell that you're on fire for our community and for the future of our students. So let's give him another round of applause. I have a 90-year-old mentor that always encourages me to make a dent where I am sent. And I think it's a reminder for us that whether we're, in a position of influence or whether we're, just entering our career paths, it is great to see somebody that has such passion for the community and such purpose. It reminds me of Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life, where he talks about the best way to make a dent where you're sent is to lean in how you are shaped. And your shaping stands for your spiritual gifts, your heart, your ability, your personality, and your life experiences. So if you want to have purpose in your life, whether you're a youth or an adult, just operate in the shaping in which you were made. And that's the best way to make a dent where you're sent. We're going to have a brief mindful moment. I'm going to ask you to stand before I have our next guest to kind of close us out. This is just a simple activity. It's called 5 Seconds of Energy Freedom. It comes from the idea that we spend 5 hours a day on our phones outside of work. And if our phones were treadmills, our fingers would scroll 5 miles of distance a day. I'm serious. 5 miles of distance, our fingers go like this. So sometimes when we get stagnant or stuck, we need to remember to move our bodies. So in the spirit of kind of the third quarter break here, this is an opportunity for you to move your bodies. I'm going to count us down from 3. When I get to 1, you have 5 seconds to stretch, hoot, holler, high-five somebody, jump around, whatever you got to do to make some noise. So if we don't do it right, we're going to do it again. So that's my warning shot to you. Okay? All right, so let's go. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, we're trying that one more time. Okay. The purpose is to move your body before we hear from Chuck. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, fantastic. You can sit back down. Please welcome to the stage Chuck Phyle, the superintendent. I'm sorry. Supervisor of the Independence Township. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Let me be perfectly clear, I'm not jumping down in the aisle. My biggest fear was I was going to trip on the stairs coming up, so I went back there. Again, my name's Phyle, and I thought where we should start is with the video of the township, just like everywhere else.
Independence Township features a bit of everything folks want, from unique dining to rural outdoor activities and world touring live music. Residents, visitors, and commuters alike enjoy the stability of a small town without sacrificing the education, technology, and services of the township. The experiences over time create a picture of a life full of family, friends, success, and support of a community. Everything in Independence Township.
So again, before we get too far on, John Elke is one of the individuals here who heads up the ITV, and he and his staff, which is made up of high school students here, put these videos together, and they're so phenomenal that I think it was last year for 24, they actually won a national award for the ability to do it. So let's give it up to those guys. So I'm a little thrown off because they were supposed to be playing AC/DC when I walked in. But what I want to go through, and I really want to start off with, is for many of you, you don't know me. I've been here for 45 years, but kind of kept my head down and was focused on some other things. So I thought I would start off by, why did I run? And it's going to be a theme that you've already heard all night long. It's the township, it's the people. You know, I can share with you that Terry now Matthew, I don't know if you guys know who she is, she's a trustee on the board with us. She came to me and said on a Monday, hey, will you run for supervisor? We think you do a great job. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I never thought of doing anything like that, you know. So I said, well, let me think about it. There's a couple of little tests that had to be passed. One was, did I think I could make a difference? The more important one was my wife right here. Oh, sorry, they were down there. Had to give me the okay to do it. So I went home and I told her, hey, they want me to run, da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, are you freaking nuts? You were the HOA president. There was 175 houses. In 14, 15 hours a day, you would get people coming up, talking to you, and it was really never positive. Most of the time when HOA presidents, they'll tell you they hear what's wrong, what needs to get fixed, so on and so forth. And she says, now you're going to times that by 37,000 people? Why would you do that? And I said, well, sheepishly, well, I think I can make a difference. And she said, well, I don't know. Go downtown to the town hall, take a look, and tell me if you really think you can make a difference. So I walked down there. This is on a Tuesday, I think it was a Wednesday. And I started looking around, and we've all been there, right? We've all been in a situation where you walk into a room, and you can just feel the weight when you walk in. And that's kind of what I felt. It was not a vibrant, exciting, it was kind of a keep my head down, stay in my queue, and just do my work, which, by the way, they were doing a great job. But there was something missing. So I come back home and I said, honey, I can do it. I can make a difference. She looked at me like, okay, yeah, sure. Like I ever had a choice of what you were going to do anyways. But she did. So I then went down on Thursday. So remember, the conversation started on a Monday. Here it is Thursday. And guess when the deadline to sign up to run was? That Thursday. So in that 4 days, I had to come up with a decision whether to do this or not. The funniest thing is that when I walked in, And I said, yeah, I need to sign a form to run. Where is she? There she is. Carrie comes flying up with the biggest grin on her face about the fact that I was going to run. Okay? So we have Terry now, Matthew. I don't know if you guys know her, but again, she's a force. She's absolutely a force. You have Carrie, who's a force. You have my wife, who's a force. And I'm going to tell you, everyone in here right now, if you had those three women telling you to go ahead and do it, you'd be standing here. So it was really because of them that I decided that I would go through and take this little plunge. There's a whole bunch of other things that I can go into, but I'm trying to keep the time down a little bit. What I really wanted to do was start envisioning independence a little bit different. Not different in the sense of the fact that we had to improve and grow and all these things. It wasn't a goal to become a Rochester or Troy or anything like that. It was really kind of getting back to our roots. You know, one of the things I went through in campaign on was that I wanted to keep this kind of that Norman Rockwell-ish community. And I don't mean necessarily by the old buildings and all that, although the Historic Society downtown has done a good job of maintaining that. It was more about what's up here, and probably more important, what's in here. And over the last year, for those of you that were watching things in the board meetings and all that, they were contentious. You know, nationally, there was this, right? And so when I looked at it, I'm like, no, we are not that group. We are not those people. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat or independent. We're neighbors, right? And that's what we heard today. It's about being neighbors and being friendly. As Shawn said, hey, you go to the Kroger's, the grocery store, the gas station, wherever, you're going to run into people you know. And we needed to make sure and go back to, and I wanted to make sure that going forward that we still had that old perception of each other. So that was the biggest thing. So when I got to the township, one of the very first things I did is I interviewed every single employee there. Except I think I missed 4 or 5 firefighters because of shifts and we just couldn't really get it coordinated. But with every single employee, I asked them, I asked them 3 simple questions. What are you doing today in the life here? Knowing that when I win, I think it's a little bit was after the primary, but before the general, I said, I can change just about anything here. What do you hope I don't change? Because it's working great. The third question I asked them was, if you were me, what would you change day one? Every single employee I asked that to. In there, their number one thing, if we look at it across all the different departments, you know, from Parks and Rec to DPW to Treasury, everything else, assessing, was they wanted better communication. But the communication was really more of saying, I want to be more involved. I want to be a part of a bigger picture. During that time when I interviewed them, there was not one employee that I came across that I said, they're going to be gone as soon as I get here. And that's pretty amazing given the size of Independence Township's town hall employees and everybody else involved. They all wanted to do better. They all wanted to do good. They all wanted to get back to that, let's make this community what it can be. So through there, I came back, and so I started going through these things, and I really started thinking about what's the number one thing that we need to do. The number one thing I thought, as I was sitting back and looking at it, is that we needed to change the culture. Right, going back to it was heavy when I walked in. It shouldn't be heavy. It should be, hey, how you doing? How's it going? Good, great. Have all those things that we would want to be when we're next to people that we like and enjoy doing what we're doing. So I started going through, and I started coming up with these things here. The accountability, being accountable for ourselves, being accountable to the residents, taking ownership for what we do. There was a little bit of a, hey, I want to do good, but I don't know, or I'm a little scared to do this. Getting out of that shell and getting that going. Taking a look at respect, right? The big thing. Independence Township is a little bit of a, it's not a little bit, it is a huge difference between the rest of the nation, right? Shawn talked about it, and so did about the fact that we are special, we are different. So let's get back to respecting each other and getting along and going through, and also going through and talking about how to improve things. There are things that are different. So one of the, you know what, all right, I probably should do these. So when we look at things for the continuous improvement, I will share with you that we as a township are changing. You know, Sue pointed out there was very limited development opportunities in the village. Well, from a township standpoint, we're in that same boat. We're down to less than 500 acres of development left. Okay? Our aging population is going like this. We are getting older as a community. That means different things have to happen. We have to start perceiving ourselves differently. We used to be a growth community, so if you think of like a stock or a startup company, revenue just skyrockets. Now, unfortunately, like all of us, so does your expenses typically. As we get to the point now where we're more mature, it starts leveling out. But now it's hard to bend that expense curve. The revenue just automatically bends. The expense curve is things that we have to go through and look at changing. Part of that changing is trying to get more innovative on how we do things. How do we look at different revenue sources outside of taxing? One of the things we try to do is go through and ask people what do they want. So all these sayings up here are responses to a survey we did. And again, if you look at it, these are the things that you would expect to see in Independence Township. It's all the things that makes this special. This is huge, right? Just like the village. This is reflective. 79% or 72.92% voted. The national average is below 50%. Why again? Because we all get it. We need to participate. And because we participate, we get a better result. Government is only as good as the participation of the residents. And clearly, you guys are participating. We have this up in our up in the township hall. A lot of people think and ask, where does the money go? You know, in here, from an operations standpoint, the township, this is basically at $5,000. If you had $5,000 of property tax, this is where the money goes. If you take a look, there's only 23% that sits inside of the township. If you look over to the right, that part of those numbers go up to that $1,152. A huge amount goes to the county. It never comes back. Matter of fact, if you talk to some of the people in the county, they'll tell you, we're a donor community. Meaning that, yeah, you're just going to send money down, you're not going to get much back, if anything. So I put that up there just as a reminder of knowing that all the things that we do and all the money that comes in, we're operating on that 23%, 23 cents on a dollar. And we're getting amazing things done. And that's what I want to make sure you understand, is that the people who are here to help and make this community better, they're doing a phenomenal job. You couldn't ask for a better group of people to sit here and serve you guys, the residents. So if we look at some of the achievements and things that have gone on this year, you know, we can go through them. You know, there's some initiatives like we were able to go through. There were some problems with the water. We were able to get in, join in a class action lawsuit. We brought money back in to help fix it. If we take a look at the park enhancements, you know, one of the things obviously about Independence Township, we are very much a park-like community. It's by design. Okay? These things didn't happen overnight. We had some very, very smart people a long time ago, I can say that, long time ago, that actually said in the master plan, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to protect. And so therefore, we are that park-like community. And it started 50, 60 years ago. We can talk about the safety, right? The safety is twofold. The safety is obviously what the fire department brings. Those are the numbers that they're doing. They're out there all the time. I can share with you that I got, one of the advantages I got, because of the supervisor, is an app that really gives me all the dispatch calls for the fire and EMS. My wife will tell you that when a call comes in, and when an alert comes in, it's louder than crap. It'll wake you and jump you. But it is amazing how many runs they do. The other thing that's kind of amazing and interesting is that how many calls they're making to the nursing home facilities, the extended long-term care, assisted living, those types of places. So when I sit there and say that our median age is going up, that's actually a challenge, because those services get more expensive. It doesn't cost much to go out and cut a baseball field and tell the kids to go out and play. Sending an ambulance or an EMS vehicle, having paved sidewalks, the safety paths, all those types of things, those are more and more expensive. The other really challenging thing here is that, and it's really kind of hit home for me, is that 2 of my kids left Independence Township. One's in Texas, the other one was in Florida. And they're like, okay, we're getting ready to have kids. One of them, I had my first granddaughter in October. And they're like, we want to come back. It's challenging. It's challenging to find a house here. You know, something under 300,000, forget it. You're not finding it. My wife and I went around, drove around, and we went looking. And one of the things is that we saw, there's a house for sale. We're like, okay, that would be a good one. Maybe a tear down. But, all right. Got on Zillow, right? Looked it up. 1,025 square feet. And again, I said, almost could be a tear down from the outside. And my first thought was, okay, well, this is only could be about maybe 150, 165,000. $285,000. It's crazy. And we wonder why we don't have a bunch of young people moving here. It's crazy how much expensive things are. So when we sit here and talk about the safety, we need to make sure that there is an understanding that we do want to take care of everybody in retirement age. But we also need to provide that safety that Shawn was talking about in the schools, where the kids feel safe. And that comes about because of the things like the Oakland County Sheriff's, the SROs, the Security Resource Officer. Those are important components of what makes this attractive to younger families. Part of what we also want to make sure happens, and again, little bum, there aren't more people here, because as I stated earlier, we are an active in group, 72%, 85%, but we need to make sure that everything we do is under a spotlight. We need to make sure that there aren't any issues about, hey, was that a backroom deal or not a backroom deal? Those days should be all gone, okay? Everything should be out there. So one of the things I've done with the directors are going through and talking about what's important to them. That's part of my learning curve too. Because here's a crazy thing. You know, it's only been 42 days of business days since I got elected. Okay? So in there, I think these guys will all tell you that, I mean, I'm in there usually about 6:30, and I don't leave until about 8 at night, not 8. There's just a ton to learn. So part of my trick was, let's go and find out the KPIs, key performance indicators, what makes their department important, and everything else, looking at those numbers to get an understanding, but at the same token, to start introducing a new way of looking at things. One of the things I found in the government, they don't necessarily grasp fully the concept of revenue. Okay? That's not something that they've always had to look at, because it's all the taxes and everything else. The money comes in, we figure out how to spend it, and we go spend it. Okay? To me, I've never been able to find a company that can cut their way into prosperity. It's got to be the top line. And so unless we're going to raise taxes, we need to figure out new ways and alternatives to generate revenue to be able to provide the services as we go forward. So these are things that we're looking at doing. So these dashboards are going to be representation of those things for each of those different departments that are important. They're going to be up front and out there. We're going to push the data out. You're not going to have to go digging for it. We're going to find ways to make sure, whether you're a newspaper person, an internet person, or want to come talk to someone, I want to see the numbers on the website, whatever method you have, we're going to try to figure out how to push that data out there. And as one person used to tell me a long time ago, the more you're exposed, the more you show, the higher up you are, the more they can see your butt. So from there, we want to make sure that we're doing everything proper. We want to make sure that anything we do, you understand exactly how we got to that point. So when it comes time to make a decision, some of them are going to be hard. And you're going to be like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to do that. At least now you'll know the why behind it. Okay? So one of the big things that we want to make sure we do and hope to do, and this is not only goes from internal but external, is that everybody understands why we're doing things. Internally, I use this analogy all the time. I said, to my directors, I said, look, if I think about a gym full of dominoes, and if I walk in and each one of the different departments has a section of dominoes that they're responsible for. I told them when I walk in there and I knock one over, you better be 99% accurate on all the other dominoes in your section that are going to fall over. If you are, then I know you know what you're doing, and I know you're looking at all options to make things better. And then I took one step further. I said, not only should you know what happens in yours, you better have a 70% predictability of when it leaves and hits another department's dominoes, where is it going to go? Why is that important? Because almost everything we do in the government side of things, the township, are interrelated. And so we do something in DPW, it does have an impact on building. It does have an impact on assessing. All these things are tied together. And what's happened up until this point, there was a lot of isolation. Meaning they were looking at things more myopically. So we want to go through and start making those changes that have that understanding. And then, audaciously, I said, your people in your department better know 70% if I ask them what dominoes, and 40% on the township as a whole. Again, understanding how we all interconnect is extremely important. That's how you start wringing out efficiencies. You get rid of waste. We're not going to do a Doge, but we're going to get pretty darn close to it. So when I talk to them, and again, revenue has not been one of the big things. I keep on telling them, we want to be the highest quality, lowest cost provider. Okay? And that way, we can keep the expenses down. We constantly are looking. We find things, we're finding things, 15,000 here, 20,000 there, 2,000 there, that we're looking at in just the last 42 days because we're starting to have conversations around this stuff. That we can get rid of this, we can change that. We have employees coming up to us now and saying, hey, if we do this, I think it'll make things better. The process will go a little bit faster. If things are going faster, that usually means better service to the rest of you and lower costs. So those are the things that, as I look forward, these are the things that are extremely important. And I look at how do we make it work? Because we know that life is going to give us challenges. 5 days into my term, I got the bill for the Oakland County Sheriff. That 15.2%, the 1.8 million. Talking about jumping into the deep end. Okay? To this date, we are still working on it. We didn't just sign it. Some other townships signed it. We haven't. You know, I've been working with Shawn. It's a big hit for Shawn, too, in the Clarkston schools. We're constantly thinking about how can we handle this? How can we do things different? But I want to make sure we're 100% clear on this. It is not the Oakland County Sheriff's. It is Oakland County Exec and the commissioners. They're the ones who did it. Matter of fact, the Oakland County Sheriff's came out against the increase. Okay? So I want to make sure that when we sit here and we hear about these types of things, it's not because of what these gentlemen have done. It's because of the commissioners. So when you get worked up, go down there and talk to the commissioners. Now, in all fairness, I see one of our commissioners back there, Juliet. She has been fighting for us all along. She was one of the ones who said, no, this isn't right. Matter of fact, Shawn and I have an appointment next week, I think it's next week, 2 weeks out, to sit down with the CFO, the deputy CFO, and the chairman of the commission to say, hey, this is BS.
You better believe it.
Let's figure something out. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, clap. This is it. This is the collaboration that we keep talking about. We can be innovators. We can come up with new ways of looking at things. Government is stagnant, okay? We need to change it up. We need to start saying, no, we deserve better. And that, how do you do that? You participate. You know what's going on. You know the fights. You come and help us fight. The louder the voice, the more they're going to hear. You know, the last thing those commissioners want to do is sit in a packed room and listen to a bunch of people not happy with them. They're reactive. And so those are the types of things that we need help on. Again, going back to it, looking at things more from a business standpoint, on Tuesday, somebody reminded me that just about, have not been in politics before, everything I say can and will be used against me. Okay? So I do need to be a little bit careful on some of the things I say. I'm still learning. So if I have to come back and backpedal a little bit, that's probably because I was just got a little worked up and I was talking and I keep forgetting that people are listening and watching and recording. Okay? But in here, these are the things that I look at that are extremely important, and those are the things that we're going to be working on going forward. And I don't mean forward like, hey, 6 months from now we're going to call it a success and move on. This is over the next 4 years. Some of the things that we're doing, and again, 42 days. This is how dynamic people who are in the township, the employees are. We finally decided that, no, we all know Oakland County is not going to give us the money back to fix the roads. They're not going to do it. Or if they're going to do it, they're going to charge us an arm and a leg. So we look at some of the options and what we can do. We're fortunate we have some money, so we went through and said, hey, let's start loaning that money out to subdivisions and let them start fixing their own roads at a much reduced cost. Okay? Different. Not uncommon. I mean, it's not a brand new idea, but the idea of us just being the bank for these people and having the money come back in so we can start doing it and just keep rotating those dollars, that is a little bit more of a new idea. Okay? But that's a new policy we came up with. We're working through it. In order to do it and figure it out, because it's still in the first round, and sometimes I motivate the trustees a little bit more maybe than I should, and we move a little bit faster. I'm like, look, we can figure out some of this stuff later, but we just need to get moving, right? We don't need to understand how every single piece on an airplane works in order to get on the airplane and go for a ride. So, now some people don't like that, and that's because she's the voice of reason. Sometimes it says, Chuck, you gotta slow down, okay? This is government, it doesn't go at the same speed, there's different things and rules to the game, okay? But we want to. I want to keep moving. Let's keep pushing that envelope. Let's keep thinking out of the box. How can we do things? Right? There are some things coming up. Dixie and White Lake. That road's going to finally get, that intersection's going to get fixed. It's scheduled for 2026. They're going to line it up, clean it up, make it less of a hazard, take more consideration for pedestrians that are walking around. So that's another thing that's coming. And I said that they don't ever bring the money back. The county is paying for this one. Okay? So we're looking forward to that. What am I going to think? The other thing that we've done is we revitalized the DDA. The DDA, for those of you who are not familiar with that, is kind of like saying, okay, we're going to have a geographical section. And they're going to go through and we're going to have them put a little bit of money in, but we're going to take the money from the township, the county, and say the money we normally send, we're going to keep it here locally. And so there's a program that you can go through and do that. One of the most blighted areas, I think, is that Dixie corridor. I mean, it's old. It needs to get updated. It needs to get beautified. Sashwell Road is nice, comparatively, right? I mean, it's got nice little tree lines. It looks more like the type of village and type of the park-like setting. Dixie needs help. So one of the things that Trustee Sam Morocco did is he brought it back and said, hey, he went out, knocked on all the doors and everything else around the township, or Dixie, and started asking, hey, please come help, let's get this going. And because of him now, it is starting to generate revenue into the fund. Revenue's coming into the fund. That money that would have gone to Oakland County is now staying here, and we're looking at those types of things to revitalize it. So thank you, Sam. This goes back to everything I just kind of talked about, right? We need to change the way we think, the way we interact. You know, one of the things that in the 30, 40, 50 conference touch points I've had with Shawn, over the last 42 business days, month, 2.5 months, is that as we were talking about how we're going to try to do things, and most of it's around the safety resource officers, but not all of it, is that one of the things he said to me after we had a conversation about some things we're looking at and options and all this kind of stuff, he said, it's not surprising that Independence Township is leading the leadership on this, okay? And that's because every single one of you make this place special. We are different, and thankfully, we're different. It's something that you all should be proud of, okay? But again, it's that innovation. Let's go. Let's think out of the box. Shawn does some crazy things. Things that when he told me, I'm like, wow, you do that? That's awesome. But those are the types of things we need to do. We sit here and talk to Sue. Yep, I got it. Sue, and we're talking about the fact that, look, the village at Clarkston, that's key. That's a key component of who we are, right? When we think about it, I think back to Bob Seeger standing on the corner sign and on his album cover, Main Street, right? And I was actually here, which I know you're going to be shocked, when they put in the first stoplight in downtown. And I actually remember the first time I got caught on it because it made me late getting home, and my dad let me know that I was late getting home. But we've grown, but that area has been very protected, and it's special. We need to do things to help each other out. That's why the things with Shawn, the partnerships that we keep hearing about, we're not three different entities. Yes, maybe on the financials, we have different reporting, but we all think the same. We all want the same thing. We would rather be considered borderless than think about ourselves as individuals. And so those are the things that as I keep going on and I keep talking, let's figure out how to do it. They're bringing ideas together. So some of the things we heard about the village, they're small, right? Real small. And so we're trying to figure out as a township level, we have excess capacity in some of our positions. We're trying to figure out how to help them and figure out, let's make things work. We can't have any one part fail. If one part fails, we all fail. Okay. Project 28. So that's my little, what's my name? Project 28, where I keep some of the different things in here. These are things, 28 is the end of my term. And when I look at it and go back, there's two things that I want to look back on, and this is how I'm going to judge whether or not I was successful or not. One are these types of things up here. Revenue from non-traditional sources. So one of the things that was really, really hard for me, and I mean really hard, is that townships, government entities, aren't allowed to make money. They're not allowed to be profitable. Crazy. That's what I keep saying, crazy. I mean, come on, everything doesn't take money, but everything important does take money. And so I'm like, let's build this up. Nope, can't do it. So what I decided to do is, let's think about alternative ways to bring money in. So one of them, that I came up with, is let's take the assessing. Nope, there she is, Kim. She's our director of assessing. I talked to her and I'm like, hey, you know what? The county does assessing for other municipalities. That seems like easy picking. Let's go after it. Started talking to some of the other supervisors. Sure enough, they're like, yeah, if you want to bid on it, we'll be more than happy. The great thing about government, good and bad, is it's kind of like playing poker with all your cards facing up. It's really hard to bluff. But the great thing is you know exactly what the other person has. So we're looking at it now, over the next 5, 6 townships, we're putting out bids to get their assessing projects. We're also looking at doing that for the building, the license inspections. We're looking at it for code enforcement. We're looking at it for DPW. Every dollar we bring in is $1 less than we have to pay out of our funds, and we didn't have to charge or raise taxes at all. Those are the type of things that we're looking at doing. Let's start looking at it differently. I don't know, it didn't say it up there, but what I'm looking at doing at the end of 4 years, I want 50% of our operating costs to be coming from outside the township. We can start doing something like that. It'll be amazing the things we can get done here in the township. The other thing is that the roads need to get fixed, and those are types of things. If we can start bringing in additional revenue from outside sources, we can start doing and expanding out the whole SAD project of the paving for subdivisions, secondary roads. Let's say, you know what, the dirt roads are terrible here, right? I mean, you need a big four-wheel lifted mud truck to get through some of these. Let's get those fixed. Again, the roads are simple things. You know, we think about it, we want our kids outside, right? Shawn was talking about getting kids outside and everything else. You know, I look at it, if we get them outside, what are they going to do? Right? And how are they going to get around? If you've got cars zipping up and down the roads, swerving in and out, trying to avoid the major potholes, it becomes a little bit risky. Let's make it safer. Safer, the way to do it that probably easiest is fix the dang roads. I know I sound like Whitmer there, but yeah, let's get them fixed anyways. We're thinking of the police service. I want to make sure we're also kind of clear on this. You know, we have a new undersheriff. Okay, so I'm learning the titles and all that. Everybody says a little bit different. Undersheriff. And so if you would stand up, please. This is Undersheriff Willis. He's brand new in position. So he came out. I didn't call him. He came out on Monday and said, hey, look, I hear that Independence Township is upset with us. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't really know that was true, but okay, starting to talk, starting to listen. What I quickly came to the conclusion was, and I think he did as well, is that we were not upset with the Oakland County Sheriffs. We were upset about the process that we went through to get the new contract for the police. So in there, he also said, hey, we got this new guy. So our sub-commander, Cummings, is retiring this month, in a couple days. He's been here for a long time. Anyone who knows him will look at him and say, how can he retire, man? He's way too young. Actually, he was like Shawn in the younger days. He looks great, and he's, you know, I don't want to tell how old he is, but he's retired age. He's put in his time. In there, they asked me, hey, you know, I don't have the control over who they pick and put in here. I do have influence. So they sat there and said, hey, we got this guy, right? Whenever they start off with that, you're like, oh, okay. We got this guy, he's a local boy. And I'm like, oh, well, that's good. Knows the area. So they went through and they said his name's Buckman. I'm like, oh, I actually know that guy. Actually, he was good friends with my younger brother. And so he is now going to be our new sub-commander. Please stand up. He lives here, he grew up here, he went to high school here. Okay? And by the way, they both told me, out of the 12 municipalities that the Oakland County Sheriff contracts with, this is the #1 place that they all want to come and work. Why? Because again, things that they've been said, the things the kids have been taught, they have respect for law enforcement. They're happy they're here. They don't think that, hey, we're over-policed, the da-da-da-da. That's not it. We want more boots on the ground. We want more patrol officers. We want more people here to take care of us. Because if you look at what we heard over the last year in the national news, all the gangs, and actually, you know what, some of those Chileans and, Chilean red gangs and all that, they were hidden just south of here, 10 miles south, 15 miles south. We didn't have that problem here. Okay? And again, because we do value what we have, and we value the police officers that sit here and protect us. Okay? The other thing so when I sit there and say we need to rethink it, I've asked them too, hey, you have a tough administration right now. Ideologically, they have a different perspective of what law enforcement should be, where those dollars should be. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. I just know that I want to keep the police force here and keep the sheriff's department here and keep them going. So one of the things that we talked about is let's start a little committee together to figure out how we can work better together. So someone from the schools, somebody from the village, somebody from the township, will meet with them and start saying, we don't ever want to be back in a position, whether in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, where we get that type of a massive increase and we have to scramble to figure out how to deal with it. And that scramble, by the way, that budget, those numbers, they knew about them 6 months easily before they released them. They waited until after the election to put those numbers out, which ironically also happens to be after the time we all have to submit our budgets. So it was a challenge. And they're like, hey, let's work together, let's figure it out. So we're looking at different options there and figuring out how we can make sure this doesn't happen in the future. The other one is what I consider to be affordable senior housing. When I sit there and talk and I look at things, I want the people that stay here, the ones who go into retirement age, maybe selfishly because I'm getting close to that I want them to be able to stay here and have the best life possible. I don't want them to worry about my taxes are going to tax me right out of my house because of a fixed income they're on. Okay? We need to do a better job at looking at how can we do this. And I think if we can figure out how to handle some of the senior housing and get that stuff taken care of, those houses could be freed up for younger people to come in and buy. And therefore now we can start bringing more people into the community. We can start bringing more kids into the school. That brings more revenue. It just snowballs and it just gets better and better and better. So that's a big project I look at that I want to make sure we get done. And there's a couple other that we're going to go through as time goes on, but these right now are pretty darn big ones. You know, pretty audacious on my part, but I don't know better. So I just think it can be done. So let's just move and let's keep going. And so that's why I keep saying that we need to talk, we need to have these things. And as I make mistakes, because I will make mistakes, I want it at least for them to be out front so you know what happened. I tell all my directors that, hey, if you're not blowing up that lab, you're not pushing things hard enough. The only thing I ask, don't be silly and blow it up the same way twice. Okay? So I want that push, that innovation. So when I sit there and say that to them, I'm asking for you to also look back through and say, hey, that was really crazy. It blew up, but you know what? We learned something, and now we're doing this, and that's much better than what we were doing. Okay? Those are the things that I keep looking at and want to keep pressing, but I need your support to do those things. Okay? Again, at the end of the day, it really is about everything you heard from all the speakers, all of them, about let's bring back together, let's be a warm, happy, neighborly area. And I think that's easy to do. It just means we need to take the blinders up. We need to be able to say, reach out. COVID's over, okay? Let's go over and start talking to people again. Let's meet them face to face. And I especially believe that because when I was running, I was never on Facebook or social media. You know, if you would have looked at my Facebook, I didn't even know I had a Facebook page until somebody said, absolutely you do. And I argued with them for a few minutes. Then they pull it up. Apparently I got it in 2009. Okay, so I'm looking at it, but the funny thing is, the only thing on there was every year on my birthday, happy birthday Chuck, da-da-da-da-da. That was it. I did find out that, wow, social media, that's brutal. You know, it's very, very challenging to even as an adult to sit back and look at it and say, holy crap, one word in a whole 2-3 paragraphs, they twisted, right? Those days should be gone. We don't need that. Let's go back and start talking to each other again, have face-to-face conversation. Let's give them a little bit more latitude, give them a little bit more understanding, be a little bit more compassionate. All those things we already are. Let's just get out there and do it. So, at the end of the day, I just want to say that I want to go back to that Norman Rockwell type thing. It's something here in here. My door's always open. I have people stopping at the counter. They get walked back. I take them, I talk to them, and have a conversation with them. The vast majority just want to be heard. Right? They're not asking for anything monumental. You know, did you hear me? I'm concerned. Yes, I heard you. Let's see what we can do. That's what they're looking for. Okay? So if you happen to be in that group, please come by at any time. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Your passion and your commitment to the community. We are about 30 seconds away from wrapping up. I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I know it takes a lot to be here for 2 hours out of your schedule. It was great to see a lot of new faces. I just want to give a special shout out to our sponsors. We had Little Caesars Pizza provide some pizzas for the child care in the other room over there, which was fantastic. Dort Financial, Meyer Market, Dan Kelly, and then Shavari and Terry Nalamafu, an orthopedic surgeon here in the area, and then I believe Terry is part of the Independence Township staff. So thank you to them. Let's give them a round of applause. There's a list of people on here. I'm not going to read this off, but I do want to call a special shout out to Lauren Rinke, who's not here today. She had a vision for this event. Let's give her a round of applause. She found out the weather, maybe if you're watching the recap or listening, thank you for setting this up. Before we go, remember John from my airplane trip to Mississippi? John shared one last story that I want to leave you with, just maybe as a little bit of encouragement. But John shares a story that he went duck hunting with his 3 boys, and it was one of those moments where he was excited to take the boys out for some hunting, but they were still pretty young, so he did what any good dad did. He brought hot chocolate, marshmallows, and Pop-Tarts. And they get there. John's been duck hunting for 30 years. It's been 4 hours into this Saturday morning trip with the boys, no ducks. They were out of hot chocolate, out of marshmallows, and they were down to their last Pop-Tart. John also brought, in addition to his 3 boys, their black lab, Sammy. So as his youngest son, who's 6, goes to peel back the Pop-Tart to eat the last Pop-Tart, Sammy comes up and gobbles it up. The 6-year-old starts to cry. As the 6-year-old crying, 2 ducks fly over for the first time all day long, and the 2 older boys take their shotgun, shoot the ducks, they fall down. The 6-year-old looks around, sees what's going on, starts crying. His dad says, "Why are you crying?" He goes, "I want to get a duck like my brothers." And he says, "We got to go. We've seen 2 ducks in 4 hours, it's time to go." So John starts packing up all his gear, and his son is still crying while the older 2 are just celebrating that they got ducks. So he goes to his son, he says, "Listen, it's time to go. There'll be another hunting trip. Just pack up your stuff, let's head out." And the son says, "Dad, I want to say a prayer real quick before we leave, because I believe that I'm going to get a duck just like my brothers." So he 6 years old, goes in the mucky marsh, says, "God, thank you so much for this trip with my dad. Thank you so much for my older brothers getting ducks. Thank you for my dog, Sammy. Even though he ate my Pop-Tart, I still love him. God, if you would just please bring me a duck, I'd be so thankful. Amen." And he stands up, soaking wet, and his dad's just looking at him thinking like, there's no ducks. So they start packing up the truck, they take a trip back. The son, the 6-year-old, still standing there in the mucky marsh. His dad says, "It's time to go," starting to get irritated. And he said, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, hundreds of ducks start flooding the sky. And this little 6-year-old boy takes his little shotgun BB gun thing. His dad said he could have shot anywhere in the sky, and he would have gotten the duck. And I thought to end with that story tonight because I think sometimes when we're building community, when we're hoping for things, we're hoping for both an abundant future for our children, for our subdivisions, for our community. Sometimes we just need to pray and hope together. And I think sometimes when we gather like this, it does the same thing. So thank you so much for being here today. Give yourself a final round of applause.